Samsara-dava-lalita-loka Samsara-dava-lalita-loka Pranaya-karunya-dhanadanatam Raptasya kalyana-gunarnavasya Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nritya Gita Vaditra Madhya Manasovasena Romanchakam Sukaram Gabhajo Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam Sri Vigraha Radhana Nityanana Sringaratan Mandira Marjanado Sri Vigraha Radhana Nityanana Sringaratan Mandira Marjanado Yuktasya Bhaktasya Niyamjatopi Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam Chaturvidasi Bhagavat Prasado Swadvanatirthan Hari Bhakta Sanghan Vitvaiva Sriptim Bhajata Sadaiva Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam Sri Radhika Madhavayorapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupanam Sri Radhika Madhavayorapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupanamna Pratikshana Swadana Lolupasya Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam Me kunjayuna Mahaniya Tatrati Dakshya Ati Vallabhasya Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam Sakshat Haritena Samasta Shastra Uktastatha Bhavyata Eva Sadhi Sakshat Haritena Samasta Shastra Uktastatha Bhavyata Eva Sadhi Kintu Prabhorya Priya Eva Tasya Kintu Prabhorya Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado Yasya prasadat nagati kutopi Jayam stuvang tasya yashasti sanyam Jayam stuvang tasya yashasti sanyam Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam Srimad Guru Rashtakametaputai Brahme Muhurte Pasati Prayatna Yastena Vrindavana Natha Sakshat Sevaiva Labhya Jushanonta Eva Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam 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 Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga, Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga, Jai Jai Jasodanandana Shachi Sutta Gaurachandra, Jai Jai Rohini Nandana Balarama Nityananda, Jai Jai Mahavishnu Rabata Siya Advaita Chandra, Jai Jai Gadadhara Siva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jai Jai Khanda Vasi Narahari Murari Mukunda, Jai Jai Swarup Rupa Sanatana Rai Ramananda, Jai Jai Uriya Gauriya Jata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jai Jai Hayache Nar Hobe na Jata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Tomra Kripa Koriya, Tomra Sabai Mili Koro Daya Ami Atimanda Jano Akul Prane Gaite Pari Hanitai Gauranga Jano Janve Janve Gaite Pari Hanitai Gauranga Jano Hanitai Gauranga Janve Janve Hanitai Gauranga Akul Prane Hanitai Gauranga Neche Neche Hanitai Gauranga Pahutule Hanitai Gauranga Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga, Jai Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Jai Nityananda Advaita Gauranga. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutapadakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitantam Sajivam Sadaitam Savadhutam Apajana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lita Sri Vishakanditaścha Yasya Brahmeti Sangyam Kvachidapi Nigame Yati Chinmatra Satta Yangsho Yasyan Shakai Swai Vibhavati Vashayan Eva Maya Kumanscha Nekam Yasyaiva Rupamavilasati Paramabhyomni Narayanakyam Sri Krishna Vidhattam Swayamiha Bhagavan Prema Tatpade Bhajami Shama Gora Ruchojvala Viramalaya Rakshno Vilaso Savai Nrityanti Dikashe Samadana Kala Vaidagya Digdhatmabhihi Anyonya Priyata Sudha Parimala Stomonmadabhi Sada Radha Madhava Madhuri Bhiravitas Chittang Mama Kramyatam Guru Shastram Sadharuchiranugatir Siddhiriti Me Yade tat tat sarvam charana kamalam rajatiyo Kripamadvikena snapitanayanam bhojayugalo Sada Radha Krishna Sada Radha Krishna Sada Radha Krishna Sharanagati Tau Mama Gatihi Sada Radha Krishna Sharanagati Tau Mama Gatihi Ali Paripalita Prabalita Ksanandamalokita Pratyasana Supamano Sumano Falodaya Vidho Samodamamoditaha Vrindaranya Bhuvi Prakasamathura Sarvati Sai Shriya Radha Madhavayo Pramodayatuma Radha Madhavaya Pramodayatu Mam Ulalasa Kalpa Rumaha Radha Madhavayo Pramodayatu Mam Ulalasa Kalpa Rumaha Jayati Jayati Nama Nandarupang Murare Viramita Nija Dharma Dhyana Puja Diyatnam Katamati Sakridatam Muktidam Praninam Yat Paramam Amritam Ekam Jivanam Bhushanam Me Paramamamritamekam Paramamamritamekam Jivanam Bhushanam Me Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama Rama. So I went on a bit long there. Please forgive me. I'm going to go right into so yesterday, all right, so really what we're doing is we're doing Anuccheda 16. But as I was doing Anuccheda 16, now if I had been a good boy today, I would have spent my time studying everything, all the work that I did before, because I don't know if it's because I'm rather, I really don't know the reason for it. I think one of the main reasons for it is because I don't have good concentration. So there are things that I have seen and done, and I don't remember any of it. It is a rather strange. It's like a kind of a amnesia. As a matter of fact, to be quite frank and honest with you, my life in general. This is why I have so little faith in history, because people are always coming up to me and remembering things about me that I have no recollection of. Memory is something I have very little faith in. Although I do recognize that there are some memories that are rough. At any rate, I wanted to, so what do I do now? I didn't want to go all the way back to the beginning, but somehow or another, it seems that we are going to, at least in part, because I was curious about, I was just saying now that I have no recollection. Aham kimakaravam kutah asam mamanakopi jnanam kimapi jnanam. This is the thing. We don't, this is why even now, I mean, people, eyewitness testimony counts for practically nothing. All right, so the verse that we want here, sarva-vedānta-ityado kaivalyaika-prayojanam iti. So this whole Anuccheda is centered around this one verse. All right, so, well, oftentimes the first part of the Anuccheda will be explaining many different things, but let's just go right into that section 1.7. So the end purpose of the scriptures is to teach kaivalya, and kaivalya means Priti. So this is what we got. This is what we have here. So tad evam bhagavat priter eva parama purushartha tve samarthite sadhuktam ata Priti Sanarbha lekyaha ityadihi. Okay, so there you can see quite well that Jiva Goswami is saying that this we have now concluded our introduction, because he says, yes, Ata Priti Sanarbha lekyaha. That was those were the opening words of the Priti Sandarbha. So Ata, now, just like it's like a sutra, Ata, now, like Atato Brahma Jigyasa, Ata, now, Priti Sandarbha, the treatise on love, must be written. So lekyaha, that's a certain kind of participle. We call it potential passive participle. So potential, why? Because it means to be, right? So to be done. It is something that is to be done, or lekyaha, it is to be written. So he's saying that now this Priti Sandarbha has to be written. So now this has to be explained. So the whole first part of the Anuccheda was explaining just like one would explain the first sutra. That's like Atato Brahma Jigyasa, pages and pages and pages of commentary in the Vedanta Sutra. So in the same way, Jiva Goswami, he has to explain why it's necessary. Why now is the time? Why is now the time to talk about Priti Sandarbha? So obviously the answer to that is, well, we've already read the first 5. So if you read the first 5 Sandarbhas, well, now it's time to do the Priti Sandarbha. But Jiva Goswami is talking about himself. He says that I have to write this now. And so now that's the explanation he's been giving for quite some time now. It's quite a long introduction that Jiva Goswami gives. Well, why is it necessary to talk about Priti? What is Priti? He has to give a good introduction to the whole subject. All right, so now that first passage is gone. So now he says, all right, so now that we have come to the agreement that Bhagavat Priti, love for God, is the Parama Purushartha. So this was what is being argued. Why is it necessary to write the Priti Sandarbha? Because Priti is the Parama Purushartha. So everything else that we've talked about has an implication, right? The first implication was what if there's some sambandha. So the first implication is if you have a sambandha, then you have to have something to do. You have to have an abhidheya. The abhidheya will always be what is it that is to be done, right? The abhidheya will always be what is to be done. If there's no what is to be done, then a piece of literature falls flat, especially a scientific literature. But then there's a prayojan also. So what is the goal of all this? If we don't understand what the goal is, then our activities, our rituals, our sadhana, and our knowledge of sambandha tattva, all these things will be useless. If we don't understand what the goal is. So what is the goal? The goal is Priti. What is the prayojan? What is the purpose of life? This is what really comes down to. So Jiva Goswami says, now this is already right, first controversial point. He says that the purpose of life is happiness. And he gives you lots of quotes from the Shastra also that tell us that. Is it true? Well, we see that that people seek happiness and they avoid unhappiness. Why are people stopping going to church now? Because they're getting more happiness and doing something else. Even if intellectually they know that I should be there, still the appeal of immediate pleasure is greater. The intense feeling of a need to do some sacrifice, the intense feeling of needing to expiate some sin, all those things are gone. People don't believe in sin so much anymore. All right, so the purpose of life is happiness, and then Jiva starts to grade happiness, and this is what we're always doing in the Sandarbhas. We're doing it everywhere. This is the only way that we can actually think. We say, all right, you're classifying things. Now classify them, that's good. You've classified them. What is your criterion? The criterion here is happiness. What brings the greatest amount of happiness? So these things have been discussed elsewhere, and they can obviously be rediscussed in the context of Western philosophy, for instance, attacking what is the purpose of life, the question. What is happiness, the question. Is there any such thing as a non-selfish action? These are all questions that we encounter in Western philosophy also. But according to Jiva Goswami and according to the Upanishads, happiness is the goal. Bhoma, and the highest happiness, that's Bhoma. all-encompassing. So the all-encompassing truth, that is the one that has the grace of Bhoma eva sukham. It has to be great in order to be happiness. Not tuchya vastuni. There is no joy in the insignificant. All right, so there's right away sets up this hierarchy system. So this is the way people used to think. There was no idea of false equality. There are certain equalities, but at the same time, there are practical differences, and those practical differences are not without meaning. So there are gradations of happiness. There are gradations of but the fundamental thing that Jiva Goswami argues is that prem, love for God, Priti, Bhagavat Priti, is the highest of all. Right? It's the highest happiness. It's the highest happiness. Love of God is the highest happiness. All right, so let's not talk about sacrificing happiness or giving up happiness. Nobody gives up happiness except for a higher happiness. If I love my God, then my love for God, that allows me to sacrifice everything, because my highest happiness lies in my giving myself to my God. So Bhagavat Priti is the highest happiness. And because it's Bhagavan, because Bhagavan, there's a vastv, there's a real thing there called Bhagavan. It's not something fake. It's not something imagined. There's a real thing called Bhagavan. There's a real entity called Bhagavan. And everyone is connected to and related to that one supreme entity, the personal God, Bhagavan. And they can be related to him in any number of relationships, natural, human type relationships. So that's Bhagavat Priti. So now this is the subject of this book. Okay? So where does he start with? So now the first thing, so the first verse that he's going to quote is this one that we were just talking about there in Anuccheda 16. That's why I came all the way back to the beginning here, because I said to myself, oh my God, what did we say about this verse back then? So this is actually the first verse of the Priti Sandarbha. How is that? It's the first verse of the Priti Sanarbha, because the way that the Priti Sanarbha works is that it follows each Anuccheda is based on one verse from the Bhagavatam. So even though the subject of the Anuccheda might vary, there might be more than one subject. He might be arguing something that has really no direct reference to the Bhagavatam, but it's a preamble to something that is in the Bhagavatam. All right, so now he's going to start. So his first verse that he's taking from the Bhagavatam to illustrate that Priti is the ultimate goal of life, right? Sa esha eva parama purusharthaha kram aritya sarvopari darshayitum sandribhyate. So sa esha. So this sa esha eva parama purusharthaha. So this very same supreme goal of human life is going to be demonstrated as above everything else by a gradual process, kramaritya, which means he's going to do it one thing by one thing until he reaches the highest point, the sarvopari. So tatra ukta lakṣaṇasya mukti samanyasya shastra prayojanatvam aha. Right, so now we have to start. So he's saying we're going to have a kramariti. So he's starting, let's say, at the very bottom. In other words, Jiva Goswami, what he usually does, he approaches the matter by taking the difficult verses first, the ones that can be interpreted in numerous different ways. And he presents those verses in a fashion according to his own understanding. Because after all, if there are parallel statements or apparently contradictory statements, if I say that this verse is being spoken from the point of view of a Brahma Gyan, well, how is that Brahma Gyan understood on the platform of Bhagavat Gyan? That's the question that you have to ask. Right? Is this verse is being spoken on the platform of what appears to be Brahma Gyan? Or this verse appears to be spoken on the level of Paramatma Gyan? Or this verse appears to have something from all of them? So the question is, how do you understand it from the point of view of Bhagavat Tattva? So when you understand it from the point of Bhagavat Tattva, the meaning may become different. So that's what Jiva Goswami will do. He says, if you understand that the Tattva here, because if we went back to the 16th Anuccheda, there he quoted the previous verses. He said, go back, look at the verses that precede this one. And you'll see there that it talks about Bhagavan and about Leela and about Sukha. So how does it go? So Kramarita, so that's what's happening in this verse. So he says, I'm going to start with a general definition of mukti. Right? Tatrokta-lakṣaṇasya mukti-samanyasya shastra-prayojanatvam aha. So this first verse is going to state that the purpose of the Shastras is, in a general way, mukti. Okay, so the first thing that he has to explain is that mukti leads, that what is mukti? Mukti is ultimately Priti. So we're coming to the end of that discussion now in Anuccheda 16. So mukti samanyasya, so now we have a general concept of mukti. And now we have to refine it, because Priti is actually the real mukti. So that's what he's going to say. Right? So sarva-vedānta, so ityado kaivalyaika-prayojanam. So I don't know why he doesn't want to put the whole verse. So maybe he's deliberately avoiding it. But sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ yat. Brahmātmaikatva. That's the second part. Now that's terrible. Once again, the failure of my. Let me just get this verse. Sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ yat brahmātmaikatva-lakṣaṇam vastv advitīyaṁ tan-niṣṭhaṁ kaivalyaika-prayojanam. So this has already been quoted before in Tattva Sandarbha. So full translation is, this Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy, because its subject matter is the absolute truth, which is one without a second, as characterized by the oneness in love of the individual living being with Brahman. So you can already see the twist that he's put on the translation. The one ultimate attainment, prayojanam, eka-prayojanam, the one ultimate attainment proclaimed in this book is kaivalya. So literally, kaivalya means in aloneness, which here implies pure devotion alone unto that supreme truth, devoid of any extraneous element. Well, there you can see a translation that is putting the commentary into it. I think the next one is also a little bit interesting. So kaivalya is a general term for liberation. So let's just really see what it says here. Synonymous with mukti. It has the dictionary definition of aloneness, perfect isolation, oneness, and absolute unity. So really the word kaivalya comes from the Yoga Shastra, then it's been adapted and adopted by the Kaivalya Advaitis also. So kaivalya, I know because I spent 3 years and I know that Swami Veda, this is what he wanted, kaivalya. So his mukti, his idea of mukti is that the individual soul floats in a kind of like a monad, kind of a, it's very much like the Jainas also. The jiva attains a kind of omniscience. But it's very close also to the Brahmavadi concept because there's no bhakti in it. So ultimately, it has to go somewhere. Anyway, kaivalya is a general term for liberation, synonymous with mukti. It has the dictionary definition of aloneness, perfect isolation. So these are all oneness. And then absolute unity. So absolute unity. So the first three are all like yoga. And the last one there, the last two, you could say, that those are the ones that are favored by Brahmavadis. So it originates with the Jains and yogis as a term for liberation, but is also favored by the Advaitins. It refers to the state of the individual soul when separated from all material conditioning and situated in perfect isolation. Swarupa Pratishtha. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the term occurs 25 times. It has been appropriated to mean liberation in a general sense, and more specifically, as Sri Jiva Goswami shows, Priti. In Krama Sandarbha to 12.13.12, Jiva Goswami says, purity means freedom from all hypocritical duties, up to and including liberation, as stated in the second verse of the Bhagavatam. So devotion without any desire for liberation is the meaning of kaivalya. So that's Sridhar. Oh no, excuse me, that's Kramasandar. So see also the explanation of Srimad Bhagavatam 2.3.12, which will be given below in Anuccheda 16. So there's obviously a strong connection between Anuccheda 16 and this one. So, what do we got? Sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ yat brahmātmaikatva sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ yat brahmātmaikatva-lakṣaṇam. That's the one. Vastv advitīyaṁ tan-niṣṭhaṁ kaivalyaika-prayojanam. All right, let's go back here and see. Come back here and see what he says. Why did he pick this verse? So, as love for Bhagavan has thus been approved as the supreme goal of life, it was correctly stated at the beginning of this Anuccheda. Now, the treatise on love of God is to be written. This text is being composed to show in an orderly fashion that love is above all other aims of human life, that mukti in general, as defined above, is the purpose of the scripture. This has been stated by Sutta Goswami. The Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy, and the one ultimate attainment is kaivalya. So the Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy, and the one ultimate attainment proclaimed therein is kaivalya. Kaivalyaika-prayojanam. So that's the subject we're going to discuss now. So kevalaha, let's make this a bit bigger here. So let's make it bigger so that we can have it easier to read. I hope you don't mind that we're going back here, and we're there we go. Just want to make it more readable. So kevalaha shuddhaha. All right. So what does kevala mean? So we already showed those dictionary different meanings, right? Oneness, exclusiveness. That's the kind of thing. Kevala, one. Right? So kevalaha means shuddha. It means pure. It means unadulterated. So if it's kevalaha, there's nothing else there. That's the meaning of kevala. So kaivalya, there's nothing else there. There's no more prakriti. That's what the idea of kaivalya is in yoga. And in Brahmavadi's kevalam, there's nothing else but Brahman. That state, that's kaivalya. So kevalaha means shuddha. Tasya bhavaha kaivalyam. Right? So the essential characteristic of this purity is kaivalyam. So it's a state of purity. That's what kaivalyam is. A state of absolute purity. Tadekameva-prayojanam parama purusharthatvena pratipadyam yasya tad idam Sri Bhagavatam iti purva shlokastena anvayaha. All right, so once again, I have not put my Bhagavatam right next to me, but I wanted to look because I don't know these. I have to see this verse. He's referred to it. Now you see, I'm not the if I was well prepared or if I was a natural scholar, I would immediately say yes. I even looked at this verse yesterday with everyone. Well, luckily the Bhagavatam is only a short distance away, which I suppose is an encouraging sign, even though it may lie untouched for days on end. So we did look at this yesterday. So this is in the 12th canto. So we're right at the very, very end of the Bhagavatam. Radhe, 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 Radhe. All right, so the whole thing was that at first it told you know that you quite surprising stuff that you see right here at the end. It's just after he just he says how many verses there are in all the different Sattvic Puranas and how many verses there are in the Bhagavatam. These are the things that he's stating right at the end. But here, what does he have? So it was the immediately previous verse, he says. So this was also we saw before. Adi madhya vasaneshu vairagya khyana samyutam hari lila kata brata mritanandita satsuram. Well, actually, he said it before. Let's see what he said here. I don't see Bhagavatam there. Evaṁ Purana. Well, I mean, it is stated in the previous verses, not specifically in that verse, but he's talking about that verse. Evaṁ Purana Sandoha Chaturlaksha Udahritaha Tatrashtadasha Sahasram Sri Bhagavatam Ishyate. So he went through all the Puranas and says that now we have the 18,000 verse Bhagavata Purana. So that's the subject. So idama bhagavata purvam brahmane nabi pankaje stitaya bhavabhitaya karunya samyak samprakashitam. So it was revealed to Brahma by the Lord, by Bhagavan, when he was feeling fear and ignorance in the Nabi Padma, in the lotus flower, right? Metaphor for birth, appearing in the world. the first creature, the first creature, the first human creature who looked at the world and saw nothing, saw darkness, and said, "Oh my God, what's going on here? What do I do next?" That was Brahma's predicament. So Krishna revealed to him the Bhagavatam in the 4 verses at that time. So he says, Adi madhyavasaneshu vairagyakhyana sangyutam hari lila kathavratamritanandita satsuram. So this one long word, this one long compound word here is all describing the Bhagavatam. Hari lila katha vratamrita nandita satsuram. So all the people by this book, so he's only been talking about the Bhagavatam. So from the beginning, in the Adi, in the Madhya, in the middle, and in the end, Avasaneshu, Vairagyakhyana Samyutam. It is filled with stories that induce one's indifference to the world. And what are these? And this book, this Bhagavatam, brings joy with its nectar of all the stories of Krishna's Leela, brings joy to the saintly persons. So this was stated in the Priti. So that's why he's saying here, Purva Shloka Stena Anvayaha. So Bhagavatam Tadidam Si Bhagavatam. Right? So Tadidam, so that idam that came in a previous verse. But at any rate, Bhagavatam was the subject, even though it was not in an immediately preceding verse. We do get it a couple of verses later, though, right? Sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ hi Sri Bhagavatam ishyate tadrasamrita triptasya nanyatra syad ratihi kvachit. So he's going to say that he's going to use the same words, Sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ hi. That is the Srimad Bhagavatam, he will say. And anyone who's satisfied with that Amrita, the Amrita was already mentioned, right? Hari, Leela, Katha, Vratamrita, Nandita, Satsuram. So Kevala Shuddha, Tasya Bhavaha Kaivalyam, Tadekameva-prayojanam. So Tadekameva-prayojanam, that was a quote from the verse. Parama Purushartha Tvena, it is the Purusha, Parama Purushartha, and Pratipadyam Yasya, that is what is to be shown in the Bhagavatam. The Yasya here refers to the Bhagavatam. Tad idam Sri Bhagavatam, so that Yasya, that book in which the only purpose, the one exclusive purpose is to reveal as the Parama Purushartha, as the supreme goal of life, as the supreme goal of life, that is this Bhagavatam. So that comes from the context. So dosha moolam hi jivasya parama tattva jnana bhava eva iti uktam. So the basic problem that we all face, dosha moolam hi jivasya parama tattva jnana bhava. He doesn't know the Parama-tattva. He has no knowledge of the Parama-tattva. So that's the basic root of the problem for him, ignorance. So this was stated in the famous verse which began the Bhakti Sandarbha. Bhayang advitīyaṁ biniveshata syat ishādapetasya viparyaya. Viparyaya smriti Talmayaya Guru Abhajetam Tadeka Bhaktya Guru Daivatatma. Anyway, that verse, I should know that verse. Anyway, Bhayang Ditiyabhinivesha Syat Ityado Ishad Apetasya Ityadi Bihi. So those are all words from that verse. So it means that this verse is one has a Dvitiya Abhinivesha. When your mind goes to something other than Krishna, well, then that's where fear arises, suffering arises. If you saw nothing but the one supreme truth everywhere you looked, then there would be no fear. The bombs are falling. It's Krishna in the form of a bomb. If he's come to kill me, that's good. It's not passive. It's the only way to really see what's going on. The ultimate doer, we're always looking at the immediate doer. We're looking at the immediate doer. So yes, there are immediate doers who are carrying out evil actions. But somehow or another, they too are fulfilling the purpose of God. So the ultimate doer is always God. That's the person who sees that. The person who sees that knows no fear. So bhayang ditya binivesha taksyat. So what happens when there's this ditya binivesha? Other things happened also. Ishad apetasya. A person who's turned away from Krishna, he also experiences, he's going to experience fear. Viparyaya. Everything will go against his ultimate desires. He will never have what he wants. And asmriti, constantly forgets the source of his suffering. So atas tajjnanameva shuddhatvam iti kaivalya shabdasya atra purvavat tad anubhava eva tatparyam. Right? So what's this kaivalya mean here? He says atas. So since ignorance is the basis of the problem, then the solution is jnanam, tajjnanam, the paramatattva jnanam. So shuddhatvam iti. So therefore, kaivalya shabdasya atra purvavat tad anubhava eva tatparyam. So because here that jnanam is what is meant by shuddhatvam, by purity, and therefore that is the purpose of the word kaivalya. We already saw means shuddha. Therefore, as previously, it means tad anubhava. So it was already talking about this, that the encounter with the Supreme Truth is mukti. Anubhava means direct experience. So direct experience of that is the essence of this state, right? Kaivalyaika-prayojanam. So what is that kaivalya? The kaivalya is direct experience of the Supreme Truth. The word kevala means pure, and its essence is kaivalya. In other words, purity. That book in which kaivalya alone is established as the supreme goal is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Since the words Srimad Bhagavatam are not found in this verse, one must adduce it from the previous one with which it is syntactically connected. The root defect in the living entity is nothing other than the lack of knowledge of the absolute reality. This was stated in 11.2.37 with the words, fear arises from absorption in duality and for one who is turned away from Bhagavan. Therefore, only knowledge of the absolute is purity. And thus, as shown previously, the only purport of the word kaivalya applicable here is direct experience of the absolute. All right, so let's just go on here a little bit more. Okay, I think when we get to the end of this, then we'll be done. Let's make it big. I like this big print here, easier to read. So the only purport of the word kaivalya applicable here is direct experience of the absolute. Atava, now we have some other interpretation possible. Atava kaivalya shabdena paramasya swabhava eva uchyate. Okay, so now I remember. Now it's coming back to me. The different interpretations he's going to give of the word kaivalya. So atava kaivalya shabdena paramasya swabhava eva uchyate. So now the word kaivalya satatyata skande brahmeshanadibhir devayar yat praptum naiva shakyate sa yat swabhavaha kaivalyam sabhavan kevalo hare. Aha. All right, so the Skanda Purana is this verse which says that that which other gods like Brahma and Isha are not able to attain, that is your nature, which is called kaivalya, because you are kevala. Right? So Hari is called Kevalaha, that's his name, the one God. So therefore kaivalyam means his nature. Right? This is a type of Sanskrit we call tadhita suffix. You make a derivative noun from other words, and that means the essential quality or the characteristic of that thing. So the characteristic of Kevala, of the one, is Kaivalya, which is oneness. Kevala is unique, so Kaivalyam is the uniqueness. The characteristic of the unique is uniqueness. So, this is what he wants to say, that Kevala means swabhava. Alternatively, the word Kaivalya means the nature of the absolute, swabhava, as stated in the Skanda Purana. Okay, so this is a tough verse to translate. O Bhagavan Hari, that which gods and Brahma and Shiva are unable to achieve, and whose swabhava is kaivalya, that is you, the unique, kevala. I would change that a little bit. At any rate, that's what we have here. I don't like to use so many Sanskrit words if they're avoidable in the English. So kvachita swartika tad hitantena kaivalya shabdenapi parama uchyate. All right, so again, taking another meaning as being parama. All right, so he's giving that swartika tadhitantena, that kevala means only, so kaivalya is taking it to mean the same thing, and so he's saying it means parama. Sometimes I was just saying that the essence of something that can be the word. So you have kevala and kaivalya. So now Jiva Goswami is saying that maybe not all the time you're doing like that. Maybe sometimes the kevala can mean exactly the same thing as kaivalya. And so kaivalya here, he's saying just means kevala, swartika tadhitantena, and then he's taking it as meaning parama, supreme. And now he's giving another quote for that. So another definition, to support the idea that kevala can mean parama. Yata Sri Dattatreya Shikshayam. So this is Dattatreya Shiksha, which is in the 11th canto. Paravaranang parama aste kaivalya sangitaha kevalanubhavananda sandoho nirupadikaha. So paravaranam parama aste kaivalya sangita, because you are beyond everything else, you are the supreme, therefore you are called kaivalya. That's what he says here. And so why is that? Because you are free from any false identities, any superimpositions, and you are the sum total of all the ecstasies of experience of this kevala. That's what the definition of kaivalya here is. Kevalanubhavananda sandoha nirupadika. The Supreme, because he's full of this anubhavananda, this experience of the Supreme Oneness. So tatapi ubhayataiva tad anubhava eva tatparyam. So in either case, anubhava or experience, direct experience, is given as being the meaning, is the essential meaning here, the tatparya. So tat swabhavam eva va. So now he's got two meanings. It's either the anubhava or the swabhavam. So he comes back to swabhavam. So tam evanu bhavayitumidam shastram pravrittam ityartha. Okay, so this shastra, this Bhagavatam, was intended in order to give one the experience either directly of him or of his nature. So this word tatsvabhavam, now I see, this is a good thing that I came back here to the very first Anuccheda again when I'm working now on 110. But the idea is that this word swabhava has come up a lot. So the word swabhavam, which I don't know why that preferred word here rather than swarupam or something else, but swabhavam is essential nature, right? The Supreme, the essential nature. So that is what the goal of this Bhagavatam is, to make us experience that essential nature of Bhagavan. And then later on what he's going to do is saying that experiencing that essential nature is the primary cause of love. So to experience Krishna's essential nature is the primary cause of prema. This will be stated later. So that's why I'm thinking here, I'm saying, yes, this is good. But I see that he's using the word swabhava right here in the beginning. So sometimes the absolute is described by the word kaivalya also, which is formed by applying the swartika tadhita affix on the word kevala, where the derivative meaning is the same as the word on which it is applied. As stated in the teachings of Sri Dattatreya, the Lord, designated as Kaivalya, is the supreme shelter for his own plenary portions, as well as for the differentiated portions, the jivas. He is the totality of pure bliss and experience, untinged by anything material. He is eternally devoid of any material designation. Yet in both cases, the import is in his realization or in his nature. And it is only to give his realization that this book, the Srimad Bhagavatam, has been propagated. Okay, well, I see that this is we have a long, well, no, it's not such a long comment, so I'll just read it here. This is what Babaji has written. In this first Anuccheda of the Priti Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami has established that Priti is the highest Purushartha. Traditionally, only 4 Purusharthas are spoken of in India, namely Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha or Mukti. To present Priti as the 5th Purushartha is a unique contribution of Jiva Goswami. This is the justification for writing Priti Sanarbha. He furthermore makes the claim that this is the only purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam, kaivalyaika-prayojanam. In Advaita Vedanta, the word kaivalya is commonly used to mean mukti or attaining Brahman. The word kevala means only. Thus, kaivalya could mean onlyness, which in that doctrine means freedom from all duality, realization of oneness or absolute identity with Brahman. But such a meaning goes against the very spirit of Srimad Bhagavatam, which promulgates bhakti as the supreme goal, as was shown in Bhakti Sandarbha. Therefore, Sri Jiva Goswami gives the appropriate interpretation of the word kaivalya as priti. He says that kaivala means pure, so kaivalya thus means purity. This can only mean the experience of Bhagavan, because it alone dispels the root cause of impurity, which is the absence of knowledge about him. The purpose of all rules and regulations stated in the scriptures is to ever remember Bhagavan and to never forget him. Therefore, bhakti or priti is the ultimate purpose of all the scriptures. Sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ yat brahmātmaikatva-lakṣaṇam vastv advitīyaṁ tan-niṣṭhaṁ kaivalyaika-prayojanam. There we go. All right, so that's all for today. So that was good. I'm glad we did that. So I go back and I study. This verse is an important verse, obviously. It comes right at the end of the Bhagavatam. So Jiva Goswami has to do something to explain that. Sarve bhavantu sukinaha, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, purnam madaha purnam idam, purnat purnam udachyate, purnasya purnam adaya, purnam eva vasishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda. Jai Jai Shyam Sundar Madana Mohan Vrindavana Chandra, Jai Jai Radha Kanta Radha Vinod, Sri Radha Govinda, Jai Jai Radha Raman Ras Bihari, Shri Gokulananda, Jai Jai Raseshwari Vinodini, Bhanukula Chandra, Jai Jai Lalita Vishakha Adi, Jata Saki Vrinda, Jai Jai Sri Rupa Manjari Adi, Manjari Ananga, Jai Jai Purnamasi Kundalata, Jai Jai Purnamasi Kundalata, Jaya Nandi Vrinda Tomra, Vipa Kori Deo He Jugal, Charanara Vinda Deho Jugal, Charanara Vinda Deho Jugal, Charanara Vinda, Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda, Jai Jai Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda. Jai Jai Radhe Krishna Govinda. Jai Jai Sri Sri Gurudev Ki Jai. Jai 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 Samashti Guru Vyashti Gurudev Ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Jai Jai Solanam Bhatri Shakkar Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Mahamantra Solanam Bhatri Shakkar Juga Pavanavatar Sri Solanam Bhatri Shakkar Hari Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Bhagirathi Devi Ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Jai Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Gomata Ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Sargo Swami Prabhu Ki Jai. Jai Jai Radha Kunda Shyama Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Barsana Dham Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Jai Sri Radhe. Jai Jai Sri Radhe. Jai Jai Sri Radhe Shyam. Sarvesham swastir bhavatu, sarvesham shantir bhavatu, sarvesham purnam bhavatu, sarvesham mangalam bhavatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.